there's a lot of fear around AI. I mean, we've looked at like Turing's report. There was a lot of people saying they're really anxious about AI. That it's not valid, that it's biased. There's safety elements that are at question around AI, and it's got a lot of people very nervous. And so I think what we need to do is roll that back a little bit and make sure that what we are developing is a curriculum that builds critical thinkers again. So then they do recognize the flaws, when there can be things that are not right, and that there's transparency around using AI. I mean, people will use AI, but we need to declare we've used it. We're not going to try and pretend it's our own work when it's not. We can say what we've used and how we've got there, but we make sure there's transparency around that, which is really important. And there should be accountability for how we use it as well.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, we are talking about belonging by design, not as a slogan, but as a daily operating system for pupil, teachers, and families. Our guest is Sarah Brannon, the head of prep at Brighton College Dubai, with 25 plus years of experience across Germany, Thailand, and UAE. She builds schools where well-being is the foundation for academic stretch. We'll go inside the decisions, the data, and the small rituals that make a global citizenship real for all kids. Thank you so much for joining us here, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Manik. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm really interested in having this conversation.
One of the the first question that we generally ask is, what intrigued you towards education? And are the reasons still the same? The reason why you joined, and how has your journey been?
Well, I suppose anybody that goes into education, it is a vocational career. It's about the children. It's always going to be about the children. When we go in, we really want to make sure that we love working with children, that we enjoy those interactions, and that's what makes us feel at our best. And I guess that was my motivation to be a teacher. I went into international teaching straight away. So I got my degree in England, and then my first job was actually in the United Arab Emirates. And so I was young then, and I just went out and I thought, this is what I want to do. And I actually really got the bug for being in international education. I've been in that ever since. And I just feel as though in some respects that hasn't changed. That's the bit that I really love, working with the children. The difficulty, the challenge can often be when you progress in your career in education, that you end up moving into leadership and you move further away from the children who you actually went in to that career for. So it's a bit of an irony really about what we do. But I have to say that I have made sure that I still preserve some of those special times with children. So I am still teaching. I am still in contact with children for regular CCAs and things that I lead myself. I'm always jumping into classrooms, you do as a leader. But I do preserve the opportunity to be with different classes, get to know them really well. And so that, while it's not as much as it was when I first went into my career, because there's a lot of other, obviously, admin and strategic meetings that I have to have, but I still make sure that that's still a big part of it. Children make your day.
Absolutely. I think you kind of nailed it on the head. Like, most of us do join this profession because and for the children and what they can do, right? Like, and it's just such a joyful experience to be in classroom with them.
Absolutely. And I think that's what you want, isn't it? I guess the morning that I wake up and think, I don't want to do this, or it's not really nailing it for me, that's the time to leave, isn't it? But certainly I haven't had a day like that yet.
And that's exactly the time when anyone should leave their job, is the moment when they're like breading and working with children, and specifically in this particular field. So when you started prep school and as one of the founding heads and the current head, what was the truth, or how do I put it in simpler terms? In Essentially, what was that mission statement, or what was that decision matrix that you would use to make all your hard decisions for?
Well, of course, it really does come down to, and it's very simple, the pupil first. What is their experience? What are we trying to do for them? What is their journey going to look like? And how can we support the pupils in that in as much as possible? Because every child's journey is different, and we know that. And when you're starting in a new school as a founding head, then you've got the actual privilege of putting all the baseline things in place. And then as the school grows, then your systems grow and your opportunities for the children grow, because you end up with more staff, more colleagues to be able to work with. And so that's just so exciting to see as well. But I think it always comes down to, what are we doing? Are we doing this for the right reason? Is it going to better the children's experience? We're very ambitious about what their journey will look like in terms of academics, certainly, but very much that whole rounded experience. And so children getting involved and really grasping every opportunity, that's when I think that's success, really.
With grasping opportunities and keeping people first, there would be a lot of times that would happen that you would have to take decisions other than, there would be hidden pressures, right? Like in things which you wouldn't have thought of before you actually opened up and became here. If you would shed some light on what those were, or what they are still are, right?
Yes, I mean, they are still, and it does change, especially in different regions depending on where you are. But I think it is the pressures on the timetable. That we have a limited amount of time to be able to work with the children. There's a lot that we want to be able to put into that curriculum for them, to be able to give them all of these opportunities. So for my experience, it is that there's the academic subjects, of course. Then all the creative subjects need to go in there. We want to make sure they're getting exposure to the arts, to the drama, to the DT, to the languages. Then different countries will have different need to be able to include languages of that country, the host country languages or curriculum. We have the Ministry of Education curriculum here, so that includes Islamic studies, Arabic, moral, social, cultural. I've now put a whole load of different things into this week, and I'm trying to think, how does that all work? So that is always a thing where we're trying to think, what is in our curriculum that has to be there for exactly the right reasons? And is there anything that we have to take out? And we haven't even mentioned all the sports and the CCAs and all of those co-curricular things that take place. So, and what we find is that with our weeks and our holidays and things like that, suddenly, how do we make that jigsaw puzzle work?
I love the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle, because there's so much that needs to be done. And I think the biggest currency in school is time, because there's never enough time to do everything that we would want them to do.
Absolutely. And we've just, and sometimes things change, It's certainly in our region, we were told our holidays have changed. So suddenly we are incorporating more and more into the few weeks before we have our winter break. And so there's all the performances that need to happen. And then there's the pressure on, but I thought I was using the stage here, or I thought I was, so there's logistical issues that come around as well, which is quite interesting.
And absolutely, amongst all of the holidays and the logistical issues, there must be also a way that the curriculum itself is changing a lot. There were things that weren't taught 20 years back, which are taught now, and there's more that's going to keep on adding. So how do you look at from a future-ready perspective of what the curriculum should look like, and what is it that you have added there?
Well, I do think there are definitely things that we've included in our curriculum now and focused on a lot more than we would have done previously. And I guess we've labelled and named it a little bit more. It's not to say that we didn't do things like problem solving before, but there's a lot more about critical thinking, about creative thinking, about how we're including that into our lessons. So teachers are ensuring ensuring that they're incorporated into their lesson plans for a range of different subjects, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of life skills are coming in as well now, which is really important. So certainly far more enterprise, financial literacy. These are things that I think it came through from children that have been through their educational journey, and then coming to the end of it, realizing that they did need a lot of these skills as well. And I guess that also brings in this sort of that cultural element about that global perspective, that understanding, because where they're going to be in the world could be very, very different to where it was when they left education 20 years ago. They literally can travel and be anywhere. And so how do they fit in as a global citizen into that? And that whole element of sustainability and that global curriculum as well is huge. So there have been a lot of advancements and changes, I think, as people realize that their academics are key to be able to getting children through and into universities, but those life perspectives are now more and more important and being valued, I think. I think they would have been there, but I think we've actually really honed in on them a lot more now and made sure that they're real features of our curriculum, not just, and it's by design rather than just happening as ad hoc.
I agree with the fact that problem solving, critical thinking, and even life skills are the key and cornerstone, because academics has always been there. I think we kind of worked through all of those things even back in the day. It's just that now there's more focus towards it and more thought given towards it. So, and this is something which we've noticed specifically in the US, where we primarily work. Like, they do have an advisory period once a week, which they kind of block it for life skills and they block it for problem solving and critical thinking, and they adapt a curriculum on that. What's your views on that versus integrating it with, say, because you said you integrate it with all your subjects, so integrating it with your mathematics and like history, science, and languages? I
think that's really key. I think it really helps for pupils to see the relevance in so many different ways. If the risk at having standalone is that it is seen in isolation. And of course, it could come out in many different ways and forms. And so by the mere nature of sort of blending it in, almost like a tapestry of who that child is, that really helps to make sure that they are sort of clothed in the right skills that they're needed whenever they might come across them. So I think that's really key. I mean, there are some things that we do specifically. So we might have academic competitions or critical thinking competitions, that sort of thing. So that highlights it and gets them to celebrate those in particular. But most of it is actually just woven into our curriculum and the nature of the pupils.
That makes sense. And I think competition would also highlight a way of kind of measuring these skill set. Yeah. And that's kind of relevant.
They even today I was just doing a facilitator training for Tournament of Minds, and it's all about critical thinking, creative thinking, and teamwork, and children having these challenges. But to be able to speak to other schools and to share that with other schools, and they're going to take it to their children, and then we'll have a tournament day. These are real opportunities. And one of the facilitators says, well, what's the goal? What do you really want? I said, I want them to love it. I want them to have fun. I want them to come away and feel really, really proud of themselves and know what they have done has been a real feat, but they've been successful. Whatever the result is, that they've succeeded with that. And I think that's what you want, isn't it? And that just gathers momentum, which is really great.
Absolutely. And it kind of also adds and builds something like resilience and grit. And this is where I would want to go towards, is the well-being of students, because in the social media age and where everyone has a smartphone and everything else which is happening, we have to now focus a lot more attention towards solving for well-being. So how have you guys worked it through your system?
So we're certainly working with our parents. So we've got a lot of working parties with parents around a lot of different topics. Some of them are working with the counsellor. We have a counsellor, and she'll be doing sort of well-being sessions with that. The students are involved. We have well-being ambassadors from the senior school will come and work with our prep school, and they are talking about it. So I think it's nice when it comes from the pupils themselves. And then we have parents who certainly, like many parents, have got quite concerned about the impact of things like social media, the potential of phones on their children. And so we are working together to be able to see what that looks like for the children. So looking at a pact for parents to say that they don't want to introduce smartphones to their children, and so they know that other children are not doing it, to help them really to say, when their child comes home and says, oh, but everyone else has got a smartphone, they can say, oh, they haven't, we know they haven't, because we're all on the same pact. But also just looking at, we don't want to lose technology. Technology is really important. So how do we make sure that there's that balance and that awareness and that responsibility with it as well? Because ultimately we want the children not to feel anxious about have they missed a message? Was someone talking about them? Those things where it's just a constant for them. So take away that and just have it for real purposes.
That makes sense. And coming from children towards teachers, right? Like, is it different for the way that you look at well-being for teachers in a format, and specifically on a global setup, right? Like, because you guys have from all across the place. It's not one place that the teachers come in from.
Absolutely. No, I do think that, as we talked about the curriculum for the children and time being one of the biggest treasures, it would be exactly the same for teachers. There is an intense day. It's a lot for them to do. They're very thorough in, looking at the data that they've got on children and then responding to the work that the children have done and being able to adapt the curriculum so much now. You can't stand up in front of a class and teach and think it's going to hit some, not hit others. They're doing adaptive teaching all the time. That's a lot of work to prepare for all the different levels of need and challenge in the class. So it will be time. So what we do is we've looked at particularly at our marking and feedback, because teachers were taking a lot of time doing that, and they were working more than the pupils. It got to the point where they would do all of this marking and then there was no response from the pupils to act on that feedback. So we've turned that around and we've got a sort of a praise system in place now. And that really is about looking at pupil response and looking at extension and support for pupils. So they would be given tasks depending on where their work was. And instead of the teacher putting loads of work down, they just set the next task according to that. And then you can see how the pupils respond, which is actually far more meaningful. And it does give teachers back time because they don't have to spend that time writing an essay on the end of an essay with no action points. So those are sort of some of the things that we have to do to support them.
And when you say all of these things, right, like one of the conversations that comes to my mind, which is specifically working a lot on this, is AI. And it's the biggest elephant in the room because there is no conversation that we can do without having a conversation about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everybody's talking about it, aren't they?
It is. And it's also magical in a sense that every week something new is happening in that domain that we don't really, like, there's no one book which is written that can be followed across. There's no one thing that is set in stone there because it's still a work in progress, but it's also a really good work which has been built out. So you don't know where it will end up going towards. So how you guys are doing with it? Have you guys adopted tools? Are you guys training teachers on AI? Or have you thought of AI literacy for students? So it's packed question.
Yeah, I know, because it is the topic of the season, isn't it? So, and it should be. I mean, we would be remiss if we weren't talking about it and trying to find our ways around it, because there isn't a path set yet, because that journey is not complete. But so we're certainly looking at developing a responsible AI curriculum. I think that's actually what we're calling it, a responsible AI curriculum. We want to make sure that we understand what we're doing. So there's a lot of fear around AI. I mean, we've looked at like Turin's report. There was a lot of people saying they're really anxious about AI. You know, that it's not valid, that it's biased. You know, there's safety elements that are at question around AI, and it's got a lot of people very nervous. And so I think what we need to do is roll that back a little bit and make sure that what we are developing is a curriculum that builds critical thinkers again. So then they do recognize the flaws, you know, when there can be things that are not right, and that there's transparency around using AI. I mean, people will use AI, but we need to declare we've used it. We're not going to try and pretend it's our own work when it's not. We can say what we've used and how we've got there, but we make sure there's transparency around that, which is really important. And there should be accountability for how we use it as well. So with piloting it in our classes, so we've got the start of a curriculum that we're evolving. We're going to pilot it in some classes, evaluate it, review it, and then a lot of teacher training will be happening in the coming months. That then we can roll out the program in its entirety with from us. Obviously, it's starting from August. And it will be a lot of review, because we need to just keep looking and reflecting and seeing what's working for the children. But I think we will have parents on board. We've talked about it with parents already. And the fact that we're coming from a place which it doesn't even have to be high tech at the beginning to have a curriculum. It's about the ideas and understanding around it, which is so important. So that's our starting base. And you speak to me in a year's time, I'll tell you where we're up to.
Absolutely. And when you look at building a curriculum, do you guys, and this is a conversation which I'm having, is, are you guys buying curriculums? Are you building it yourself? Do you guys have curriculum designers and someone in-house?
We're co-creating it with one of our parents, who is someone who's involved in AI and has been developing, working with schools quite a lot. And so using that experience to be able to put with our knowledge and understanding, with our academic leads and with our specialist computer science teachers. And, you know, basically there's some people that have really got that interest in it already. We've been to workshops and things like that. And then really trying to together craft it together. And so it's certainly not an off the peg. It will be something that will be unique to us, because we feel as though it's not a one size fits all. And everyone's community is slightly different. Everyone has a different feel about what's the right way to go with it. So we'll be working together with our community to make sure it's right for us.
That makes sense. And I think using one of the parents already kind of helps it out. Plus you have your computer science teachers and the right folks to build it around with.
It's exciting. I mean, I think it's important to embrace this. I think it's something that I'm interested in myself. So I know I've been on lots of courses, and I'm reading around the subject and just trying to find good examples. I don't think any of us want to reinvent a whole wheel of everything, but it's about pulling together the pieces that really make sense to you. So I'm seeing a lot now that I feel as though I can really get on board with, and I feel would be right for our school. So I do think it's exciting.
Absolutely. I think it's having internet back in the day and having computers back in the day. It's something like that in technological terms. It's something new, but super exciting. And the kids who don't understand and use it well, as you rightly pointed out, right? Like if they give away their thinking to AI, it's going to be doing a lot more harm. But if they have the agency and the critical thinking and the problem solving skill sets and use it as a tool, as it's meant to be used, then they will have a lot more better things, because there's going to be a huge gap when with the amount of work that we can do with AI versus without AI, and just the kind of output that we can deliver in real life scenarios.
Mind very much that, but the human element is not there,
Yeah.
and that's where people can fall down. If they start asking to solve our problems, or to do that, we're not algorithms. We are very, very much human by design, which is what AI isn't. They've been designed by. So it's just seeing those differences, I think, is really important.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree on that. Like, what makes us human is entirely the complexities of emotions that we carry, all the social emotional things that happen to us, and building on the emotional intelligence if has to be built out, just not the IQ piece.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the things that we look at doing, right, like, and is if you had enough time and enough money in the world, what is it that you would be building for your school right now?
I mean, in terms of, we have lovely spaces and things, which is super. I do think that one of the things that we just want to keep developing, I think, is the opportunities for children and pupils to develop things like Oracy skills. I think that's really important. So I think what we talk about a lot is, curiosity, confidence, and kindness. And that being able to have that confidence to be able to speak and be able to do well is really important. And so putting into the curriculum more elements of that. So we have things like drama and lambda. But I do think ultimately a pupil set against another pupil in the world of work, it's about how they can actually articulate themselves, show passion, show what they understand, have clarity. I think that will set them apart from another person. And it's going to be quite competitive, and we know that. And so I think also, that side of it, being able to be able to confidently speak, but also to be that kind of person that people want to have in their workplace is really important. And I think that's where that kindness comes in. So how do we develop that empathy, that understanding, that whole person is really key. And so, as much time as I could have for that in the curriculum, I would.
Yeah, I think one word that kind of stuck with me, and it's right behind you, is kindness. I think it's one of the most underrated qualities we can have, curiosity and kindness, in the sense that it's super easy to be nice but not kind. And that's something which I've kind of taken into account.
And I do think you can actually, people said, well, obviously that is something you talk about a lot, but we talk about it all the time. It is something that you can learn about what it is to be kind, what it does not look like, and how you can value it, and then how you can expect it. That you set that goal for yourself, that's what you're going to do, but that's what you expect from others. So you can call it out when you see that it's unkind. And I think that's really important too, because that alleviates some of these problems where people feel as though, you can get into situations that are repetitive and it turns into bullying, the thing that we don't want to happen in a school. But if a young person can actually stand up and say, I know that's not kind, and that's not what we do here, then you're way down the line of a child that's ready to go forward, which is in a great way, which is lovely.
And this is one of the loveliest notes to end on. It's basically something which we live by. So we asked the previous podcaster, the previous leader who came on our show, to leave us a question for the next one. And they ended up with saying, what was it that 5 years ago you believed, which is untrue right now? And what would you think 5 years from now the future would look like, which you would want to believe that it would look like?
It's so interesting, though, to see, because I think things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah.
From my perspective, so a lot of the work that I've been doing recently has been along the DEI lines, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just looking at how pupils belong in our school, in our community. And I was thrown sort of a challenge. Just recently, I had a meeting with someone from a group called Representation Matters. And they said, look, they visited us before and then they come back now. And they said, but great to see what you're doing. You're doing so much. That's lovely. Have you thought about the context of when your children go into other places and there are increasing tensions within society? Some of them are racial tensions. Some of them are cultural tensions. And so now you're creating this environment where you're trying to make sure that they understand, that they're open-minded, that they are looking to support each other. And what are your children going to do in that situation? And that actually was an uncomfortable thought, really, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's not where I thought I would get to. I've been doing a lot of work to get this, so now I'm almost being questioned. Have you prepared them properly?
Yeah.
So that's a change, I would say, in my thinking. So now I've got to think again and think. Not that I don't want them to feel included, but it's more about how do we address that a little bit more. That's something I hadn't given it probably enough thought to.
So is that what next 5 years would look like, to give it enough thought on that front and make sure that it's all covered out?
Yes, we can't say what the world's going to be, can we? That's our issue. I certainly hope that we have less tensions in society, and I hope that we are sort of almost like a model of what it can look like, and that society is in the same vein. But what it does look like, we don't know. So I guess we just have to prepare everybody for all sorts. I do think that there's always going to be a place for that empathy, for that understanding, for that kindness. So no matter what they find in the world around them, I think they will still stand them in good stead.
I agree with you. I think themselves, they can be the shining light, even if there's other things that are not around them. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely lovely and super insightful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. It's been nice to just have a chat, and all the topics are all things that we are thinking about on a regular basis. So it's just been nice to be able to air them today.
Thank you.